And this is why we go to church, and this is why we pray, and this is why we suffer for other human beings, and this is why we put ourselves through spiritual training so that we can show the world Christ, not ourselves, but Christ. And this is why during Lent, St. John Chrysostom always reminds us, and we always forget, that the Christians are supposed to be fasting not just for themselves, but for the whole world. Christians, when they fast, they're supposed to be taking all that money that they save from not eating meat and dairy and all those expensive foods, and they're not supposed to keep it in the bank, but they're supposed to give it away to the poor. Could you imagine if every single Christian in the world fasted, first of all? That would be a great feat. And even if every Orthodox in the world fasted, and if every single Orthodox who was fasting gave away all that money that they saved from fasting to the poor. Could you imagine how much that would transform the world? How many poor would be fed? We could do it if we wanted to, but we choose not to. And so we are not the light of the world that we could be. Could you imagine if we did that? If we did that, people would say, who are these crazy people, the Orthodox, who suffer and give away everything for their fellow human beings? Would not the whole world want to become Christian? Amen.
You have been listening to iSermon with Father Theodore Paraskevopoulos. For more information on Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church, please visit www.stsconstantineandhelen.com. This has been a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.
Orthodox music, lectures, prayers, and more on Ancient Faith Radio. Thanks for your support.
Glory to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit.
This is Orthodoxy Live with Father Evan Armatas, a live interactive call-in program where your questions about the Orthodox faith are addressed. Father Evan is the priest at St. Spiridon Greek Orthodox Church in Loveland, Colorado. Call in your question at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Here now is Father Evan.
Well, good evening and welcome to Orthodoxy Live. This is your live call-in show about the Orthodox faith, her teachings, and her traditions. I'm your host, Father Evan, and we're streaming to you live here on Ancient Faith Radio. I'm glad you're with us tonight. We look forward to taking your calls this evening. And as we open up the program, there's a couple of lines open, and so you can dial in at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-AF Radio. You can also reach us at ancientfaith.com. If you're listening to this as a live broadcast, or even if you're listening to this as a podcast, you can record a question by going to ancientfaith.com. Look at the live radio button, and then you'll see the Orthodoxy Live logo. Underneath, you'll find a microphone. Just click on that, and you can record your question. You can also get to us at askask@ancientfaith.com, or if you want to get to me directly, that's orthodoxylive@ancientfaith.com for your email questions. Of course, to listen again to this program or any other programs here on Ancient Faith Radio, you can subscribe using whatever podcast platform that you use. And if you haven't yet done it, I highly recommend that you get the Ancient Faith app on your phone or tablet, whatever mobile device you're using. And there you can stream live AFR talk or sacred music 24 hours, 7 days a week, year-round. As we get underway, I'll be taking your calls and look forward to hearing from you. I'm ensconced here in our Fort Collins studio, and John is back in Chesterton, Indiana with the crew there. And again, we've got one open line left at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-AF-RADIO to call into tonight's program. Well, before we get to our callers, I just wanted to mention, today is the end, if you will. It's June 28th, tomorrow being the last, or I should say our fast for the Apostles' Fast ends tonight. This year, that Apostles' Fast, one of the 4 seasonal fasts of the year, Great Lent, Apostles' Fast, abbreviated depending on when Pascha falls this year. Pentecost was quite late, and as a result, we had a short fast, a light fast. It ends with the feast of both, St. Peter and Paul and the Feast of the Holy Apostles. And so to those parishes that will be celebrating, my dear friend, Father Tom out in Seattle, many years to your community, the parish of St. Peter and Paul in Boulder, just south of me, celebrates, and many parishes, Holy Apostles up in Cheyenne, Wyoming. We wish many years to all of them. Last week I mentioned that Father Peter Harrison, a beloved priest in this area, passed away. He was laid to rest this past Thursday in a service. Clergy from around the Front Range and states as far away as Oklahoma attending. May Father Peter's memory be eternal. Well, we're going to get out to our first call, and I think it's Michael. Michael, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, Father. Father bless.
The Lord bless you, Michael. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from around Euless, Texas. I would like everybody to pray for my father, Father Vasily.
Yeah, please tell us what's going on.
Well, he just got sick and he hasn't got his results back. What time it is.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I know Father Vasily Tudora quite well, and I'm sorry to hear that he's taken ill. Of course, he'll be in our prayers. I know his wife, Presbytera Mirella, and their children. I've known Father Vasily for many years out there at St. John the Baptist, right, in Euless?
Yes, Father.
Well, Michael, thanks for letting us know. And again, all of our listeners, if you can put Father Vasily Tudora in your prayers as he's taken ill, and I guess you're waiting to see if he tests positive for COVID, huh?
Yes. God bless him, I hope.
Yeah, I hope that he doesn't have it. And Michael, tell us your question.
Well, I was raised Roman Catholic, and then I grew out. I left the church. I did all kind of weird things, Hinduism and all that, right? Mm-hmm. But I got in some trouble a couple of years ago.
Uh-huh.
And God bless the OCPM. The
Orthodox Christian Prison Ministry. Yes.
Right. And, I had some disagreements with the Roman Catholic Church, although I was praying the Liturgy of the Hours.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but once I come to the church, the Orthodox Church, I started praying the Eastern prayers.
Yeah, of course.
I missed the Benedictine prayers, so I went to a pre-Vatican II, right?
Yeah.
Pre-Vatican II Benedictine prayer. I'm asking your opinion on is that a valid prayer rule, or should I stick with the Eastern Orthodox?
I appreciate this question, which we've never had on the show before, but you call and it gives me an opportunity to say a little bit about it. Well, we know that Saint Benedict, who is someone very much revered in the West, but also in the East, part of the canon of saints prior to our split, Saint Benedict received his rule of prayer and the monastic rite from the East. And primarily the rules, as I understand, written for daily prayer and spiritual life by St. Basil the Great. And just recently, last weekend, 2 of the members of my community became oblates, O-B-L-A-T-E, of the Benedict. And they went through the prayer rite to enter into that special status for lay people who want to be attached to the Benedictine prayer rule and the Benedictine rule of life. This is, of course, Orthodox. And we know that within the Eastern Rite, much of the prayer rule of Benedict is not used, not because it's disregarded or it's viewed as lesser. It's just not part of the, if you will, the historical tradition of the Eastern Rite prayer rule. But Orthodox Christians of the Western Rite, Orthodox Christians who grew up with the knowledge of the Benedictine rule, still use it. Of course, as you said, an older version, as you've picked up, or one that you're familiar with. How is this all sounding to you, Michael?
Well, it's sounding good. I just, I'm Greek Orthodox now. That's
of course.
Chris made it. In the book, Father Vasily said this was good. Just stay out of the back of the book, kind of. With the Western saints.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the end of the day, when we say following a prayer rule, for many people that sounds either foreign, unusual, they've never heard of it perhaps, or they think it's wrong or crazy. When we talk about prayer rule, we're just talking about structured prayer that allows us to detach our own will and our own self-direction in prayer. And there are lots of rules. A rule, another way of saying, is a canon, which is kind of like, a list and a measurement of how we're going to pray, just like we have a canon of Scripture. And, there are a number of traditions within Orthodoxy that help us in our life of prayer. And look, many of them within the Orthodox Church are specific to, let's say, your personality. They don't necessarily fit every person. And so to find a prayer rule that works, glory be to God, and the Benedictine prayer rule is, of course, part of the church. So the use of it in our personal prayer life is wonderful.
That sounds great. I find it more economical, rather than doing the Eastern prayers and then doing the whole prayer psalter. I find it where I can read and pray the Psalms more proficiently, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well,
and
go ahead.
My only other question is, he suggested using the Eastern Orthodox profession of faith rather than the Apostles' Creed.
I would say to use there are some modifications that I think are helpful when using the Benedictine prayer rule. One of them being to use the Constantinopolitan Creed versus the Apostles' Creed, because it's a fuller expression of faith and it guards against some of the heresies that came about. And you know what, Michael, if you want to reach out to me at orthodoxylive@ancientfaith.com, and you may not have caught that, but you can go back and listen to that. I'm going to connect you with a member of my community who's in that oblate program with the Benedictine prayer rule, and he's gone through the Benedictine prayer rule and made some modifications that are important, sort of like the one that Father Vasily pointed out to you.
Well, thank you so much, Father.
Yeah, Michael, it's a pleasure to talk to you, and please give my regards to Father Vasily, and thanks for calling. It's your first time, right?
Well, yes, sir. I just discovered the Transforming in Christ podcast.
Oh, yeah, the Bible study. Well,
I've been burning it up this last
week. Well, it's funny because, I think people find that, and then it's like they're going 5 days a week, 6 days a week, listening to several hours, but there's plenty there. And I'm glad you're joining us in that podcast as well. That's available here on Ancient Faith Radio, Transforming Our Lives in Christ, which is a weekly Bible study that I do. I'm glad you found that as well, Michael.
Yes. Thank you so much, and I pray for everyone out there during this crisis.
Thank you, Michael. God be with you, and thanks for calling.
Yes, Father. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Well, as Michael drops off, that's going to open up a line for you if you want to try and get in tonight at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-AF Radio. We did have full lines, but like I said, as Michael now just drops off, that'll open up a line for you. If you've been trying to get in, you can do so now. We're going to go back out to the phones, and I think Connor, are you there? Connor, welcome to the program.
Absolutely. Thank you, Father Evan.
Hey, Connor, where are you calling from?
Tallahassee, Florida.
No way. Well, I think you're the second caller from Tallahassee in as many weeks. We had someone calling in from Tallahassee recently, and he was looking into Orthodoxy. And just today, I did a baptism. One of my favorite things to do in this life is to celebrate a baptism. But I had a baptism for a gentleman who grew up around the Miami area, and one of the attendees at the baptism was a member of our community who's from Tallahassee, and we've got a little contingent of Floridians in our parish. So,
wonderful.
Yeah, she and I know Julie listens to this program pretty regularly, so she'll be happy to hear there's another person from Tallahassee who's part of the Ancient Faith Radio family. So, did you grow up there?
Yes, I did. And I was actually that person that called in a few weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Well, then there you go. So, Connor, welcome again. Forgive me, you know, as the weeks go by, it's hard for me to remember names and people that call. So
totally
forgive
fine.
me. Yeah. Well, tell me your question, Connor.
Yeah. So as I've been continuing to read and learn, I was listening to a Catholic talk about why they almost became Orthodox but didn't.
Okay.
And one of the reasons was the visible unity of the church. And I know they talked about this a lot with the Pope, but she specifically brought up the issue of the schism that currently exists between Moscow and Constantinople, and that also existed in the early, or in
90s.
like 98, I think. So like I looked at that and I was really troubled by that, because I was thinking, okay, well, let's say I joined even the OCA. That's not recognized as autocephalous. It's fully. So that would be recognized as under Moscow. So then would that actually be in communion? And, you know, like, how does this whole thing affect the witness of the church and the visible unity of it?
Great question, Connor. Thanks for asking. Now I recall, because you emailed me this question earlier today, didn't you? Or was it yesterday?
Yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah, Connor, it's a great question for many reasons. First of all, because as we look at the church, we look at its witness in the world, we wonder in these visible structures, these administrative structures, patriarchates, do they remain in unity with one another? And if we look through history, we have to be careful, because while we talk about the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, it would be incorrect to say that the church has not, throughout its history, experienced disturbances in that unity. Schism is probably too strong of a word to be using right now with the disagreement that's going on between Moscow and Constantinople, because schism infers a break in communion completely, and that's not what's going on right now. So the faithful who attend parishes under the ecumenical patriarchate, people who attend parishes under the Moscow Patriarchate, the faithful, the laity, still commune and participate in the sacraments of one another's churches. What is currently going on is that the ecumenical patriarchate and the Patriarchate of Moscow are in disagreement over the establishment of the Church of Ukraine. You probably have read all this, right? And as a result, the Church of Moscow has said to the church under Constantinople, for now, until this disagreement is sorted out, priests of the ecumenical patriarchate cannot celebrate in parishes under Moscow and vice versa. And so that's the nature of if you want to call it a schism, I think that's too strong of a word, because they have not broken off completely. And as you noted, this happened again in 96, around there, and it's happened throughout, the history of the church. Disingenuous to say that any of the churches, whether that be Rome or the Episcopalians or Anglicans, have not experienced the same, or Lutherans. This is a constant theme throughout church history, unfortunately, where unity seems to constantly be something we struggle for. to maintain our unity of faith. And, you know, the Catholic Church has obviously gone through this, both through the Protestant Reformation and really to this day. I mean, whether you look at the Polish National Church or other movements within Catholicism, to me and to the way that I look at, you know, this movement within the church related to unity, I don't tend to get overwrought about it, and I'll tell you my reasons for it. As I said, the historical aspect, that this has happened before and it will continue to happen. The gravity of the situation, it's not schism. It's not the refusal to commune or to recognize one another, which is more the state that exists between, let's say Orthodoxy and Presbyterianism. It's even modified between Roman Catholics and Orthodox at this point. The bull, the letters of excommunication between the two churches have been retracted. There's a new dialogue. And so there's an attempt to understand one another once again and to reunite the churches. I think where we want to look at schism as a grave issue, and because this is an issue of administrative order, it's not as grave, is when we find the churches disagreeing theologically. And whether or not they hold the same faith, which is not being questioned right now. Moscow's not saying to Constantinople, we don't share the same faith, and vice versa. What Moscow is saying is, look, we believe our administrative jurisdiction is over the Ukraine, and we don't believe you have the right to establish the Church of the Ukraine as an autocephalous church. And the Ecumenical Patriarch is arguing the opposite point. So it's not a theological disagreement. It's a jurisdictional, administrative disagreement. And so that's another reason for me not seeing this as something grave, in the sense that, we're headed towards two separate churches. I don't think that's the result of this. This will be something that they'll work out. And the third thing that I think we look at, again, is we want continuity of faith. We want to see, does the church that we belong to continue in the same beliefs and the same practices that the church has for millennia? This is the true sign of the canonicity or universality of the church. I'm going to stop there, Connor, because I've said a lot, and just see if you've got a redirect or a follow-up.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit confused on why why not being in communion is different from not letting the priests celebrate at each other's liturgies.
Okay, so there's sort of levels to how serious a problem could be. And if the Ecumenical Patriarch and the Moscow Patriarchate said, look, the faithful underneath each jurisdiction are no longer allowed to participate in the sacraments, that's pretty close to a schism. When it's the clergy are being asked to refrain from concelebration, that's a rebuke. That's elevating, a disagreement beyond, hey, here's a letter that says what I think you did isn't correct. It's now saying we're sort of filing this in the category of we're pretty serious and we need to work this out. It sort of gets the attention of the other. And again, these things have happened before, and that's where sometimes when we look through sort of a rose-colored glass at church history, we'd say, oh, it's always sort of been, one church, and then there's this big split, and then there's two churches, and then there's another split, and then there's a Protestant churches, and that's not really a fair shake of church history. It's a lot more nuanced than that. And if you look at the Arian controversy, for example, that occurred early on in the church's life, you start to see that there's a lot to it. Anyway, just explaining that as I know clergy under the Moscow Patriarchate, and as I visit with them, they don't say to me, Father, you and I now belong to different churches. That's not at all what they say. I do not vest, and vice versa. And so there's a sorrow there. And hopefully, within the next short while, they'll sort through that administrative problem, and communion in the sense of the clergy being able to concelebrate will be reestablished.
Thank you very much for that. That makes a lot more sense.
Well, so I'm glad to help, and as you kind of continue in this journey, of course, you're going to come up with other things that make you scratch your head. So feel free to call back, Connor.
Thanks so much.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're going to go out to Sia. I think it's Sia, which as Connor drops off, that'll open a line for you. But Sia, you're on with Father Evan here on Ancient Faith Radio and Orthodoxy Live. How are you?
I'm doing great, Father Evan. Thank you for taking my call.
You bet. What's your full name?
Athanasia.
Athanasia. So my daughter's name is Alexia. Okay, but her nickname is Sia.
Oh, nice.
So you and my daughter have the same.
We have a lot of common things.
Oh, really?
When you talk about yes.
Oh, well, really?
When you were on once talking about your upbringing, working in your father's restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I could relate to that call very well. So.
You grew up in your father's restaurant as well?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Well, where are you calling from, Sia?
Calling from Kansas City.
No way. So I don't know which parish you might attend there, but would you happen to know my friend Father Dino?
Yes, that is the parish I go to.
Oh, wonderful.
And actually, Father Dino and I went to St. John's in Omaha. You know, he was a lot younger than I was growing up.
But you grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. I gotcha. Well, my family, when it came, here's another thing we share. When my family came over from Greece on my dad's side, they first settled in Omaha.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and attended that parish of St. John's. Yeah.
Yes, and Father Chris is a very close friend of ours.
Yeah, he's here in Denver now.
Magaditos.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the program, Sia. I'd love to hear your question.
My question is, of course, I grew up in the Greek Orthodox Church, and I understand that we have free will, but it's always been very confusing to me that we have free will.
Okay.
Because, of course, the examples in the Bible throughout, but of course, Judas. It's very scripted what is going to happen.
Okay,
so Judas and Peter. And
right.
So I don't really understand
it.
Yeah.
Well, so let's step back, and then we'll move into a couple examples that may help. So when we talk about the fact that we are created in God's image, we're not just saying sort of a cute phrase or sort of a stock phrase. That means something very technical to us in the church, right? To be created in God's image carries quite a bit of theological nuance and understanding behind it. And so, for example, one of the things that we would say is that, God is a person. Okay. And when he creates humanity, he imbues and endows humanity with personhood. Okay. And so you're a person, I'm a person. And that doesn't just connotate, the physical manifestation of Sia. It conjures, if you will, a whole host of ideas and concepts that are important to us in the church. One of those being that you have a will. Okay, persons have will. And you have the right and the freedom to exercise that will. And that's what leads us to saying free will, okay? Now, we should note that within the Christian world, there are those who do not believe humanity has a free will, okay? But the church has always affirmed and always defended the idea that if we are in God's image, then we have a will, and that will is free, that it cannot be subverted, it cannot be manipulated, it cannot be overcome. Okay? Now you may ask yourself the question, there's so much more to say about this. In fact, we could do a couple programs on just this question. But you may ask yourselves, why would God, when he's creating humanity, give to us this great gift of personhood? Why would he give us a will, and why would he make sure that will is free? Have you ever thought about that? Why would he do that?
I really haven't thought about it.
Sure. Well, I mean, I asked you a question, and I know I've put you in the deep water, in the deep end of the pool. But I think if you listen here, you may go, oh, that makes total sense. The greatest gift that God can give to his creation is, have you ever thought about that? What's the greatest gift he can give you?
Love.
Yeah, you nailed it.
I guess.
Right.
Love and free will, right?
Well, the greatest gift he can give you is love. That's the greatest gift he can give you.
Right.
But can you love without freedom? What do you think? So do you have children?
Yes.
Can you make them love you?
Like love is more abstract. What? I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, can you make your child love you?
No.
I mean, you can't.
I believe they do.
But yeah, they do. But you can't make them. Can I make you love me?
I guess not.
Can I lock you up in a prison until you do?
Well, baby.
I could, right?
I mean, I guess we don't have control. Right. I mean, yes.
Yeah, I could do all sorts of things to sort of force you, but that doesn't mean you will. I mean, why did you fall in love with your husband? Why didn't you just fall in love with somebody else? I mean, you exercised your will there, right? You chose, you decided. Love ultimately is what the gift that we most want from God, and we're gifted by God, and God himself is love. But he, in his infinite knowledge of what it means, what love means, he knows love can't be coerced. It can't be forced. It can't be taken. It can only be given, and it can only be given when one is free to give it. Every other form of love, quote unquote, that is not free is an aberration. Right? I don't mean to put things in such a stark terms, but think about rape. Why is rape so abhorrent to us? Well, there's a number of reasons, but one of the greatest reasons is that it is a forced act which ignores the dignity of freedom that is required for love and that intimate act of love to occur.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, of course.
Of course, right? So we know that love requires freedom, okay? And we can't be forced to love, and we wouldn't want to be. I mean, think of it. Would you sense, capital G, it's gross to think that I'm going to force or require my child or my friend or my spouse to love me. And there's a funny movie, Bruce Almighty, that came out years ago. What was the comedian? John Kerry. And I don't know if you remember, there's a scene where he's got all this power and he's trying to make his girlfriend love him, but he can't.
Okay.
Right? Well,
I saw the movie, but it's so long ago.
Yeah, that's theologically true. God can't make us love him. He can't.
Right, we have the free will to that. But
yeah.
I just still, I don't know.
Yeah,
what
so let's go now to the simple example. Right. So I have 4 children, and I can tell you often what it is they'll do. I mean, I
Right.
I know, like one of my daughters just got a job as a lifeguard. And, the night before I had said to her, hey, what time's your shift? She said, oh, I'm doing the morning shift tomorrow. And I said, you should probably get ready for that shift. No, I'm fine, blah. And I knew she wouldn't get ready. And I knew she'd end up late for work. And I knew she'd forget stuff. So the next morning, total panic. I haven't packed my lunch. She's supposed to be at her shift at one point, and it's 5 minutes to that time. I'm like, you're going to be late for work? No, I'll be fine. Of course, she gets to work. She's late. She calls me. She says, I forgot this and that. And so she's like, can you run it out to me? Now, I knew all that the day before, right?
Okay.
I knew it.
Yeah.
I knew it. Does that mean that I caused it to happen, or I forced her will, or I somehow premeditated all of that?
Well, I feel like a lot of course, history is the best, prediction of the future.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like I know where my kids are going because of their past acts.
Your knowledge of it.
That
and
my
your
son
wisdom
will not make his bed in the morning.
Right.
So I totally understand that.
It's not different for God.
Okay.
God knows his children. He knows us. He has wisdom beyond what I have. I mean, my simple example of knowing what my child is going to do is based on, as you said, historical precedent. I have some wisdom. I kind of know a few things about life. I can see things unfolding that she can't see. That doesn't make me prescient. That doesn't make me, a fortune teller, right? It just makes me wise and discerning.
Right.
In the same way.
Was there a lot of examples of, Judas betraying?
Of course.
You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? If there was multiple happenings, then I kind of understand that correlation where, Peter had denied him, multiple times in the past. It's like, I think it's easy to say, oh, well, you're going to deny.
Sort of go beyond his ability, right? He gets out on the waves, and Jesus kind of knew that about Peter and other things that that aren't recorded for us. We know from the Gospel of John that Judas liked to stick his hand in the money box. That he was a little bit unscrupulous, right? And so again, these ideas that God knows doesn't mean that God has foreordained for us, just like for you with your child. I mean, that's a simple example. Now, ultimately, God's sovereignty and his providence and his ability to know, right, is a concept that we have to sit a little bit uneasily with, Sia.
Okay.
Because you're never going to fully understand how this all works.
Absolutely.
Right? So you're always going to have to sit with it a little bit, where you're a bit uneasy and unsure of how this all works and what it means. But that's okay. We're not involved in a relationship with God in our faith that is completely explainable. I mean, there are elements that are mysterious and beyond our comprehension, and we understand them better as we go. And that's life, and that's okay. But if you can think about that and pray about that reality of love and the necessity for freedom. That over time, I think, will be your strongest ally for working through that concept,
Okay.
And remember that that's the very question that Jesus asks Peter after Jesus experiences his betrayal, and knowing he's going to betray him, comes back and he says, what? Peter, do you love me? Remember that?
Yes.
And it's because Jesus doesn't know. He can't know. That's something that only really the person can give to God. I mean, God, wow, imagine that. The God of the universe can't get that from us. But like any person, he wants it.
Okay.
It's the only thing he wants.
That way.
Yeah. And Peter then says to him, yes, he doesn't say I love you. He says, well, I like you. That's what the Greek says. And so Jesus, has to deal with, okay, and he doesn't say, well, Peter, you're supposed to love me. I mean, what are you thinking? I just died for you. No, he leaves him in his freedom. He says, okay, Peter, you just like me? I understand. I mean, it's amazing passage of Scripture. So, Sia, so glad to meet you. Thank you so much for calling.
Well, thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, you bet. You bet.
Okay.
Tell Father Dino hello and hello to your family.
I will.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
We're going to get out to our next caller in just a moment, but we're going to take a quick break. Again, we've got some open lines as those callers dropped off at 1-855-237-2346 if you're having a little problem getting in or got a little long-winded with my answers. So if that took too long, just call right back in. We've got some open lines, and we'll be right back. John, hold tight. We'll get right to you after the break.
Orthodoxy Live with Father Evan will be back in a moment. In the meantime, lines are open at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346.
Ancient Faith Publishing presents I Live Again, a memoir of Ileana, Princess of Romania and Archduchess of Austria, who in later life became Mother Alexandra, founder of the Orthodox Monastery of the Transfiguration in Pennsylvania, who wrote this memoir shortly after relocating to the U.S. in the 1950s. It tells the story of a life full of suffering, tragedy, and exile, but all is suffused with the author's deep faith, hope, love, and even joy. This reprint includes additional material collected by the nuns of her monastery that sets the memoir in the context of Mother Alexandra's later life. To find this book and others like it, you can go to store.ancientfaith.com. Again, that is store.ancientfaith.com.
Father Evan is ready for your call, and our lines are open at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Here once again is Father Evan.
Well, welcome back to the show, and we appreciate you listening tonight. Again, you are listening to Orthodoxy Live here, June 28th, 2020, here on Ancient Faith Radio. We're going to go back out to the phones. Jonathan, are you there?
Yeah, hello, I'm here.
Hi, Jonathan. Welcome to the program. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Edinburgh, Texas.
Edinburgh, Texas? Where is that?
Yeah, it's near McAllen, Texas. I don't know if you know where that is, but we're on the border with Mexico. It's near South Island. I don't know if you know where that is.
Well, welcome to the program. Nice to have you with us.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a quick Google and see if I can find you on the map. Because Texas is a big state. I know that.
Yeah.
You know
how far south as you can get in Texas before you get to Mexico.
Oh, really? Well, that's. I'm sure it's hot down there, then, huh?
Yeah, it's been around 95 degrees most days. These days.
Well, I found you. I see McAllen, and you're across the border from Reynosa.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Well, is it a big town?
Well, Edinburgh's probably about maybe 80,000 people. But, I mean, it's all kind of right together with the McAllen area. The county here, they say, is about 800,000 people. So, big area. So.
Yeah, that is indeed. Well, welcome to the program. I think you're probably a first-time caller because I just never heard that city. Edinburgh before, so welcome to Orthodoxy Live. Nice to have you on the program.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your question. Tell me what you're thinking.
Sure. So, wow, it's been a few weeks since my wife and I started listening to an old podcast of yours, The Introduction to Orthodoxy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was recorded a long time ago with a tape recorder, actually.
Yes. Yeah, it's like from 2005 or something like that. And I have to tell you, I mean, for me, it was like drinking from a fire hydrant.
Really?
And I'm listening to some of those episodes again. It's just so much information and so many questions that I've had over the course of my life since becoming a Christian in, I guess, more or less a Protestant tradition. And so many questions I've had that have been answered just through that podcast.
Thankful for that.
And so I mean, it's, you know, we're I mean, I've always kind of like felt like there's something missing, right? And there's and so we're seeking more, and there's only one Orthodox parish here in the whole what we call the Rio Grande Valley, and the small parish is part of the OCA. And unfortunately, the priest has been ill and he's been in the hospital, and I think they've kind of suspended services.
Oh wow!
Because of the COVID-19 as well, right? And on top of him being ill, so there's been just a number of issues. And so, I guess, you know, my question, to get to my question is, you know, we've got an Orthodox Bible. We've been doing the readings and we've been doing prayers. And I've been attempting some of the fasting regimens of the Orthodox faith, and it's been very fulfilling, you know, as part of my daily routine to be, you know, praying more and fasting more and things like that. But we're looking for is there any book or is there, you know, more information where we can get a lot of answers from a Protestant perspective, you know, that, you know, common questions, common things that we might ask, right? So I don't have a real specific question. It's just more, what are some resources that we might have to answer these questions? And I got to be honest with you, you know, from my perspective, I'm almost sold on it, right? I want to go and say, hey, you know, I want to go to an Orthodox church, but anyways, that's my question.
Well, there are a few books that I would say you might want to start with that, you know, might answer some of those questions that you've been wondering about. One of them is called Becoming Orthodox, A Journey to the Ancient Faith. And that the writer of that was Peter Gilchrist. Was a well-known Protestant. He was with, you know, a movement that happened within colleges. You know, oh gosh, it just left my mind. I was just going to say it. Campus Crusade, and Father Peter became Orthodox and wrote a book that has been read by many. Called Becoming Orthodox. Another book that some people find really helpful is called Drinking from Land of Shallow Wells. Let me see if I can pull this out of my memory bank. It's by Matthew Gallatin. Maybe our producer back in the studio can He's gonna find that for me, but that's a well-known book. There's another one called A Short Trip to the Edge by Scott Cairn, SCOTTCAIRN. That's a book that a lot of people seem to like that sort of journeys into Orthodoxy. Another book that I think, you know, is become sort of a standard now for people is written by Father Josiah Trenum. And he writes a book that sort of goes through the entire Protestant movement called Rock and Sand. So it's an Orthodox appraisal of the Protestant Reformation. It's called... The other book I was trying to remember is called Thirsting for God in a Land of Shallow Wells. And so that book is worth checking out as well. There's another series
for God in a land of
shallow wells. Yeah, the Rock and Sand book I highly recommend. There's some podcasts and some videos on that as well, and that's by Father Josiah Trenum. That's a little bit of a tome, and boy, you know, his references and bibliography would be well worth you looking into. Another book or series of books is by Clark Carlton, and he's got 3 books. and the series by Clark Carlton, I think it's called like The Faith, The Way, and the Truth. His book on Protestantism is really written from his Protestant background, and I would tell you it's a little bit apologetic. I mean, he takes an axe. He's not gentle. Now beyond that, there are a number of deeper theological works that explore Orthodoxy and its theology, often beyond sort of that sort of journey phase, that as you delve into, let's say, the Church Fathers or some of the contemporary writers who deal with issues related to our life and faith. I'm thinking of authors like Hierotheos Vlachos, even a recent book by Dr. Timothy Petitsis called The Ethics of Beauty, and on that goes. I mean, you just can you go down sort of the rabbit hole there, and you'll never find the bottom of the resources that are available there. But for that seeker, these books are a good place to start. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think, is the church down there St. George the Martyr?
Yes, St. George the Great Martyr Church. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I would connect with that local parish and ask them, what do you do at this time as everything's sort of been closed down? Any recommendations for someone within the parish? What's the next big city?
Well, I mean, I guess San Antonio is like 4 hours north of us, and there's Corpus Christi a couple hours away. Yeah,
Corpus Christi. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say they did have somebody visit their parish because we followed them online, and I think they were from San Antonio. They came, and that was just like a week or two ago.
Right.
They actually, I think the bishop made an announcement. Right, they were temporarily suspending until the father here, because he's just coming out of the hospital from something.
Yeah, so they got to be gentle with his health. Yeah. I mean, obviously that's going to be your best resources once the priest is well enough and the life of the church returns to a more typical rhythm, to enter into the life there. Until that time, you might want to contact the parish in Corpus Christi, and one of these Sundays in the summer, make a trip up and meet with the priest and tell him why you're coming. Take a few hours on a Sunday and arrange for a visit, and just be upfront with them and say, hey, here's what's going on. And I know the priest in Corpus Christi, very knowledgeable. He'll be very helpful. The priest in San Antonio as well. But, the one in Corpus, you said, it's 2 hours away, so that might be the better place to start. You're starting your prayer life. You're starting perhaps to keep the fasts of the church, right? You're reading your scriptures. You're starting this investigation through listening through podcasts, which is obviously such a huge resource, right? To just tune in. Father Andrew Damick, he's written a book that's available through Ancient Faith Media that I think is Heterodoxy and Orthodoxy. That's something to pick up. Orthodoxy and Heterodoxy. I got that reversed. But you want to look at that book and listen to his podcast as well. Search the Scriptures, which is a live program available here. And then, look, you can tune in to the liturgical life of my parish, St. Spiridon's. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's something that Ancient Faith Radio, is linked to as well. And just start tuning in to the Sunday liturgy. And, Bible studies on Tuesday, and we've got other classes and events that go out through the week. This next week we don't, because I'm taking a family vacation. But otherwise, in this time where things are a little bit limited, feel free to join in, if you will, as many others do, with our parish, and just get connected.
Okay.
Is this enough for now?
Yeah, definitely. That's a lot.
Appreciate
the information.
You bet, Jonathan. Well, do me a favor. In a month or so, check in, and we can have another conversation about what's next, okay?
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, Jonathan. Give my regards to your wife.
I definitely will.
Okay, bye-bye. Well, we're going to go out to the phones again. You're listening to Orthodoxy Live here on Ancient Faith Radio. And I think it's Gina. Gina, are you there? Gina. Are you there, Gina? Oh, there you are. Hi, Gina.
Hi.
Hi, Gina. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Seattle, Washington.
Well, that's a place I know well. My wife is from Seattle, and we lived there for a few years. What part of Seattle are you in?
Well, I actually live in Bellevue, but I always say
no way. I know Bellevue.
Yeah, Bellevue, but my church is in Seattle. I don't know if you're familiar with Father Fotios.
I know Father Fotios well at St. Demetrius.
Yes.
Yeah, how wonderful. He's your parish priest. Yeah, well, tell Father Fotios hello. And my in-laws live in Kirkland. And so I see you have a 425 area code, and so that's their area code as well. And I know that area, and so you just crossed the bridge over Lake Washington and St. Demetrius over in the U District. Yeah, great parish.
Yes, I love it. I've been going there for many, many years.
Well, welcome to the program, Gina. I'd love to hear your question.
Thank you. Yes. My question is I recently came across an article on Instagram by Father Amber Rose. I could try to say his the last name, but I couldn't, even if I tried.
No problem.
And he was just basically warning against the vaccination, specifically for the coronavirus. And this is something I've been very much interested in. I wanted to know what the church view on that topic. I've been researching it on YouTube, just trying to get to see what my elders of the church think of this topic. And just wanted to get your take on that.
I appreciate it. Well, I won't necessarily be able to give you a personal take. I'll kind of try to give you a summary of the church's position, and not a partisan position. In general, the church is pro vaccines. It's pro medical research and science. It doesn't, and again, this is not me advocating one way or the other. It's just saying that in general, the church and its hierarchy responds positively to the research and science that goes on in our medical labs and in let's say organizations like the Center for Disease Control or research hospitals like the Mayo Clinic. And one of the reasons I say that is because the church has never had an antagonistic view of the scientific community. It's never viewed science as sort of opposed to faith, but rather science, human wisdom and logic is seen as an outgrowth of God's wisdom and God's intellect, that God gave to humanity a beautiful brain that is inquisitive and wonderful and can be used for so much good. And we see throughout time and history, the church has supported, hospitals and universities, and always seeks to increase knowledge, both of the natural world. And I can think of, for example, a very famous and well-known saint of our time, Saint Theophan the Recluse. When I say our times, meaning, he lived, recently, not in the 60s or 70s, but he was a lover of science. In fact, he would tell his spiritual children, he mentions this in one of his letters, that, besides theological works, it's good to read biological works and to read natural history. In fact, he was well-versed in the sciences. And we see that with other contemporary bishops. I can think of one in particular who wrote a wonderful book about the existence of God, who studied at MIT, the incredible research university in Boston, and is now a metropolitan in Greece. He highly educated, and I can think of, let's say, the abbess of the monastery of Saint Nino in Georgia, whom I met and she has her PhD in the sciences and utilizes her background in the natural world to create these beautiful gardens that adorn the monastery, and vegetable. Her knowledge of horticulture is immense, and she uses all that knowledge to adorn and to beautify and to serve the community that surrounds the monastery. So there's a very positive that describes the church's position. For example, your local hierarch is Metropolitan Gerasimos in San Francisco, and he would be the one that would issue for your metropolis. But in general, as I said, the view is positive around vaccines, around research and science. So thanks, Gina, for calling. And it's nice to have a fellow Seattleite, Bellevuean out there. God bless.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Father.
Bye-bye. Good night. Well, I noticed that as I was finishing up with Gina, there were still callers trying to get into the program, and we apologize. We've run up against the top of the hour, and there were often times here tonight where the lines were full. And so if you didn't get a chance to get in, we'll be broadcasting next weekend. Here in America, we'll be celebrating Independence Day, the 4th of July, on Saturday the 4th, but Sunday the 5th, we will be back on air as we are each and every Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. I want to thank our crew back in Chesterton and all of you, our wonderful listeners, and encourage you in this time to continue in your life of prayer. Tune into our Parish of St. Spiridon, which if you for whatever reason, the restrictions that might be in your locale, we are broadcasting live each day our liturgy on YouTube. And we do also post those, so if you're not able to join us live, you can get to them later. Of course, to get back to this program or any of the others, just check them out, and please sure, if you can, to support and tell your friends about us, like us, write a review, let people know what you think of Ancient Faith Radio. It helps to spread the good news of Jesus Christ. Well, thanks for joining us for Orthodoxy Live and Ancient Faith Radio. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm Father Evan, and this is your live call-in show about the Orthodox faith, her teachings, and her traditions. We'll be back next week. Until then, good night and God bless.